Measuring trade balances. A few decades ago, it was common to track the solid or physical items that were transported by planes, trains, and trucks between countries as a way of measuring the balance of trade. This measurement is called the merchandise trade balance. In most high-income economies, including the United States, goods make up less than half of a country's total production, while services compose more than half. The last 2 decades have seen a surge in international trade in services, powered by technological advances in telecommunications and computers that have made it possible to export or import customer services, finance, law, advertising, management consulting, software, construction engineering, and product design. Most global trade still takes the form of goods rather than services. And the merchandise trade balance is still announced by the government and reported prominently in the newspapers. Old habits are hard to break. Economists, however, typically rely on broader measures such as the balance of trade or the current account balance, which includes other international flows of income and foreign aid. Components of the U.S. current account balance. Table 1 breaks down the 4 main components of the U.S. current account balance for the last quarter of 2014, seasonally adjusted. The first line shows the merchandise trade balance, that is, exports and imports of goods. Because imports exceed exports, the trade balance in the final column is negative, showing a merchandise trade deficit. How this trade information is collected is explained in the following Clear It Up feature. How does the U.S. government collect trade statistics? Do not confuse the balance of trade, which tracks imports and exports, with the current account balance, which includes not just exports and imports, but also income from investment and transfers. Statistics on the balance of trade are compiled by the Bureau of Economic Analysis, B, within the U.S. Department of Commerce, using a variety of different sources. Importers and exporters of merchandise must file monthly documents with the Census Bureau, which provides the basic data for tracking trade. To measure international trade in services, which can happen over a telephone line or computer network without any physical goods being shipped, the B carries out a set of surveys. Another set of B surveys track investment flows. And there are even specific surveys to collect travel information from U.S. residents visiting Canada and Mexico. For measuring unilateral transfers, the B has access to official U.S. government spending on aid, and then also carries out a survey of charitable organizations that make foreign donations. This information on international flows of goods and capital is then cross-checked against other available data. For example, the Census Bureau also collects data from the shipping industry, which can be used to check the data on trade in goods. All companies involved in international flows of capital, including banks and companies making financial investments like stocks, must file reports, which are ultimately compiled by the U.S. Department of the Treasury. Information on foreign trade can also be cross-checked by looking at data collected by other countries on their foreign trade with the United States, and also at the data collected by various international organizations. Take these data sources, stir carefully, and you have the U.S. balance of trade statistics. Much of the statistics cited in this chapter come from these sources. The second row of Table 1 provides data on trade in services. Here, the U.S. economy is running a surplus. Although the level of trade in services is still relatively small compared to trade in goods, the importance of services has expanded substantially over the last few decades. For example, U.S. exports of services were equal to about 1/2 of U.S. exports of goods in 2014, compared to 1/5 in 1980. The third component of the current account balance Labeled income payments refers to money received by U.S. financial investors on their foreign investments, money flowing into the United States, and payments to foreign investors who had invested their funds here, money flowing out of the United States. The reason for including this money on foreign investment in the overall measure of trade, along with goods and services, is that, from an economic perspective, income is just as much an economic transaction as shipments of cars or wheat or oil. It is just trade that is happening in the financial capital market. The final category of the current account balance is unilateral transfers, which are payments made by government, private charities, or individuals in which money is sent abroad without any direct good or service being received. Economic or military assistance from the U.S. government to other countries fits into this category, as does spending abroad by charities to address poverty or social inequalities. When an individual in the United States sends money overseas, it is also counted in this category. The current account balance treats these unilateral payments like imports, because they also involve a stream of payments leaving the country. For the U.S. economy, unilateral transfers are almost always negative. This pattern, however, does not always hold. In 1991, for example, when the United States led an international coalition against Saddam Hussein's Iraq in the Gulf War, many other nations agreed that they would make payments to the United States to offset the U.S. war expenses. These payments were large enough that, in 1991, the overall U.S. balance on unilateral transfers was a positive $10 billion. The following work it out feature steps you through the process of using the values for goods, services, and income payments to calculate the merchandise balance and the current account balance. Key concepts and summary. The trade balance measures the gap between a country's exports and its imports. In most high-income economies, goods make up less than half of a country's total production, while services compose more than half. The last 2 decades have seen a surge in international trade in services. However, most global trade still takes the form of goods rather than services. The current account balance includes the trade in goods, services, and money flowing into and out of a country from investments and unilateral transfers. Thank you for watching BookTube channel. Make sure to smash the like and subscribe buttons to receive notifications about new contents.